If you live along the southern coastline of Italy, Malta, Greece, and the Canary Islands, you see this a lot. Illegal migrants being processed at ports after being rescued by the nation's coast guards or NGOs that find them stranded in unsafe boats and ditches in the middle of the Atlantic and the Mediterranean Sea while trying to reach Europe. Since the start of the migration crisis in 2015, the continent of Europe has witnessed a dramatic fall in the number of illegal migrants entering Europe. The lowest record was in 2020, during the COVID pandemic, where only 99,000 people entered the continent illegally. This fall has been the result of the recent rise of far-right governments across Western Europe that are against illegal immigration, the likes of the Italian government of Giorgia Meloni, the government in Budapest of Viktor Orban, and many others that have greater representation in the European Union, that make it easy for tough illegal immigration policies to be passed by the European Parliament. But despite the stout measures that the EU has put in place to prevent further illegal immigration, more and more migrants from Africa, Asia, and the Middle East still show up at the southern shores of the EU. So, why is the EU having a hard time containing the migrants? And why do more migrants keep on coming, despite the risks involved?
Primo, io non consentirò che l'Italia diventi un campo profughi d'Europa. Punto secondo, in ogni caso.
Between 2011 and 2012, a series of nationwide protests started to spread across North Africa and the Middle East. Millions of citizens from these countries were protesting against their authoritarian regimes and were pressing for economic change. This movement was what came to be known as the Arab Spring.
The Arab Spring began here in Tunisia in December 2010. Within days and weeks, the people of Egypt, Yemen, Syria, and Libya raised their voices in protest too.
The movement only became successful in Tunisia and relatively in Egypt, but led to the start of civil wars in Libya, Syria, and Yemen.
3 years after the fall of Muammar Gaddafi, Libya's fragile government is unable to control militias of former rebels battling for political and economic power.
This resulted into hundreds of thousands of people to flee their bombed homes and sought out refuge into neighboring countries. Majority of the refugees preferred Europe as their point of destination. This is because Europe offered a good environment for human prosperity. For those who were fleeing Syria and Yemen, they passed through Turkey and flocked the EU borders in Greece, Macedonia, and Bulgaria, while those from Libya took boat rides across the Mediterranean Sea and arrived at the island shores of Malta and Lampedusa. By 2015, the migration crisis into Europe was worsened by the spread of ISIS in Iraq, Libya, and Syria.
Russia has launched a new set of strikes against ISIS in Syria. Russian ships in the Caspian Sea fired cruise missiles at the terror group's positions, targeting their oil reserves.
By this time, over 1 million illegal migrants had already entered Europe. This sent panic across the EU. Top EU officials convened a summit in Turkey in 2016 and struck the EU-Turkey deal that instructed Turkey to prevent migrants from reaching the EU. In return, Turkey would receive 6 billion euros in aid and other diplomatic amenities. The deal worked momentarily in reducing the influx of migrants. You can see how the numbers dropped in this chart from 2016 to 2020. During the same period, migrants from these African countries, some who were fleeing poverty, unemployment, and conflict, started to make their way towards Europe through the Atlantic Ocean or by transiting through Libya and Tunisia before making the final dangerous stretch across the Mediterranean Sea.
In the past 3 years, more than 10,000 men, women and children have died trying to cross this stretch of water. Migrants. People. Each one had a story, a hope, a dream.
To be open, we need to have limits. To welcome people, we need to have our own house. We therefore need borders. They need to be respected. There must be rules. Today, things are not done the way they should be. The Europe I believe in is a sovereign Europe. We need a Europe that maintains and protects its borders with a new and common asylum policy.
Just as how the EU signed a deal with Turkey to protect its eastern borders, the same tactic is being used in Africa. Since 2017, the EU has given millions and billions of euros in aid to Libya, Tunisia, Egypt and Mauritania, so as they can crack down on the 300 million smuggler business and prevent migrants from leaving their shores.
Their visit, the EU Commission President, the Italian Prime Minister and the Dutch Prime Minister announced that the European Union may offer over $1 billion in loans and financial assistance to Tunisia. A portion of this will be geared towards stemming illegal migration and anti-smuggling operations.
Of course, also migration was on the agenda. I think we made some excellent agreements on this, and we will work on this over the coming weeks. And that is important, indeed, also, as Ursula mentioned, Ursula von der Leyen, to kill that cynical business model of the boat smugglers.
This move has long been criticized by human rights groups regarding how sub-Saharan migrants are treated by the Arabs. Before the signing of the Tunisian deal in 2023, Tunisian President Kais Saied visited illegal migrants in the town of Sfax and staged a photo op with the sub-Saharan migrants to show that he cared about their welfare. But months before, he stoked racist abuse of black African migrants in Tunisia, with a speech rallying against a perceived plot to erase his country's Arab identity. In places like Libya, arriving migrants are often beaten and kidnapped by Libyan government officials. Some end up becoming slaves, while women are often sexually abused or forced to become prostitutes.
We are from X-Fast. We have been here for 2 weeks and some days. They brought us from X-Fast, they brutalize us, they maltreat our women, they maltreat the youth. Here we have been drinking this river water. We need to get crabs and things to eat from the river, which is not fair. No food, no water. They materialize us here, they brutalize us. There are snakes here, nowhere to sleep, nothing to eat. We are begging on the new end to please come to our aid. We are suffering here brutally. Look at our skin have been infected with different infections, no treatment, no food. They have been maltreating us maliciously, which is very wrong. Maltreating our women, raping our women, destroying our phone, which is not good. And we have women of 6 months, 4 months, 3 months here, with children here, living in this kind of condition.
In response, the EU denies the abetting of these kinds of acts, saying that the nature of how migrants are treated solely lies on the African governments. The dangerous journey that the migrants have been taking has come with its own cons. Since 2014, according to the International Organization for Migration, 25,000 people have drowned while crossing the Mediterranean Sea, and a total of over 31,000 migrants have been reported dead or missing. But despite this reality, more and more migrants are still willing to risk their lives by paying smugglers thousands of dollars just to get them in these fragile boats, in hopes of reaching the promised land. The migrants who make it to Europe are sheltered into congested and unhygienic migrant camps, where their asylum applications are processed. Italy and Greece are the top EU countries that host illegal migrants. The two countries have been facing a lot of stress trying to handle the situation. They waste millions of euros handling illegals, who keep on coming back even after repatriation, leaving fewer resources for national development. And And since other EU countries are reluctant to accommodate the migrants, Italian and Greek coast guards have resorted to rough measures in handling of the migrants by forcibly turning them back at sea before they reach the shores. The EU currently holds approximately 1.3 million illegals. This is a spike from 1.1 million in 2022. Most of them are Syrians, Afghans, and Turks. The UK has also been facing the same migration problem as the EU. In a population of 68 million people, the country only holds 36,000 illegals that luckily make their way to France before crossing the English Channel. But the situation is well contained by Downing Street. This is mainly because the UK is very far away from Africa and the Middle East, and also the passing of the Rwanda Act of 2024 that now allows the UK to send illegal migrants applying for asylum in the UK to Rwanda. The prospects of permanently solving illegal migration into Europe is only possible if the migrants' countries of origin have good governance. If there was economic and democratic prosperity in their countries, none of these people would consider risking their lives. But as long as there is corruption, poverty, and conflict in their nations, no number of measures will prevent these people from trying to get to Europe, where they believe they will have a better life.